Right. Give us a little background of your race, about you. I know you served in the military. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was in the Navy for 5 years. I was a CTI, that's a cryptologic technician interpreter. That's basically a linguist. I learned Hebrew, and I worked with Israel and the Middle East. I was in from 2001 to about 2005. So I was in during both 9/11 and the Iraq War, which gave me a unique perspective on Middle Eastern policy. After that, I went to Loras College, and then from there I went to China and stayed in China for about a year and a half studying Chinese. Came back about a year ago and got into this race.
Why don't you take the next 3 minutes and just tell us a little bit about your background? Well, you've just told us about your background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your fundamental beliefs, your core principles, and then tell us about your race after that.
Sure. My fundamental beliefs come from, one, my upbringing. I was raised a Christian. And my political awakening, as it were, came in about 2007. I was one of the apathetic Republican voters that kind of checked the box. And then Ron Paul came into the scene, and my younger brother Jeremiah Johnson, who told me about him, said, hey, check out his voting record, because that was my big deal. A lot of people say things, but then they vote differently. But he voted consistently for, the entire time he was in. So I helped out with that campaign, and I actually helped host events for other Republican presidential candidates, because I was in the Loras College Republicans at the time. And that's what really started this whole process for me, starting to question even bigger picture things. Because when I was in the Navy, I questioned a lot of things that had to do with our intelligence laws and intelligence directives, and how they were, a lot of the mandates are very unconstitutional. And as a service member, I should have probably received more flack, but I was fortunate that I was in a field that was very utilized all the time. So I was able to ask questions, and they just kind of, saw me as the guy that was a little bit too constitutional at the time. So anyway, after that, getting involved with politics, I ended up originally running against Pat Murphy, who is a Speaker of the House in Iowa.
Right.
And what got me into this race, this congressional one, was I was at a Tea Party meeting, because I go to all the Tea Party rallies, and I go to the Tea Party meetings at Dubuque. And a guy came to speak who is actually now my main primary opponent for the primary. And he spoke. He gave his normal speech. Afterwards, I asked him some constitutional questions about the Obama's policy of assassinating U.S. citizens and torture. And his answer to me was, quote, the intelligence community should not have its hands tied, end quote. And I thought that answer was so far off base for a lot of reasons. One, he didn't know that I was actually in the Navy and I was in the intelligence community, and he was never in the service, nor was he in the intelligence community. And two, the fact that you would blanket an answer like that for something that is so blatantly, it reminds me of old Soviet Russia. I mean, we're supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, yet now there's a bureaucrat, and nobody actually knows who it is in the executive branch that can declare someone an enemy, and they can be on an assassination list. Yeah, they paraded some guy before us, this cleric, that Muslim cleric, who, he may have been a terrorist, he may have been a bad guy, these kind of things. But the point is, once you see the principle, it allows for major abuses in the system. And there's no question that should even have been brought up as an idea. That's what got me into this race. When he answered that question, I talked with him for an hour afterwards, and he couldn't see eye to eye with me on it. And I said, I'm concerned because I know you would probably win this primary if I did not oppose you, because there were several other guys in the race at the time. But I saw that he had Washington connections. He was kind of touting it, which turned the Tea Party off to say one. And after that, I was like, all right, I can't let this pass.
Well, I'm a little biased here because I actually live in the district that Will's running in, and I support Will. So, disclaimer up front for everybody out there listening.
Makes sense.
And And, it is really getting down to brass tacks in our district for this race. I have to say that it's an important district in America, and I'm biased, but the first congressional district, it used to be Jim Nussle, Republican. He was the chair of the budget committee, was there for a long time under Bush. Right. Then Jim Leach prior to that. Right. Okay. And now it's Bruce Braley is there.
Jim Leach, a member of the CFR and Trilateral Commission.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, I remember during the John Kerry, George Bush election, on the same day, Kerry and Bush campaigned right in downtown Davenport in the 1st Congressional District. It's an interesting dynamic because we're right on the Mississippi River, and so you can kind of get Illinois and Iowa at the same time there. So it's an important district because of its proximity to 2 states as well in terms of national politics. But it is it runs independent. There's a lot of independent, non-party voters in the district, and so it can go either way. And so it's an important district. And when it comes to the Republican primary, which is June 8th, it's Will's. Will is not the establishment candidate. Right. He's not the Washington insider, and the guy who he's running against is his. If you look at his campaign manager, he used to work for the National Security Policy Center and all this stuff. So it's truly, do you want more big government? Do you want a big government Republican in there? Or do you want a liberty-minded candidate actually representing in the district? So that's my big plug for Will. I think he's a good candidate.
Well, I just met Will, folks. I want you all to know I just met Will last night for the first time, but I served on the Republican State Platform Committee with Will's brother, Jeremiah. And I have a real good feel for who Will is now after talking to him last night. I made my donation to his campaign last night. I plan on making more. I hope you will also donate to his campaign. I believe your website, Will, is willofthepeople2010.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so folks, Will of the People. I love that name. Okay, willofthepeople2010.com. Please go there today.